I've been listening to they remastered the White Album. Finally, it sounded like shit before. You know how it sounded all like crappy, like my microphone?
That. Yeah.
Like they recorded it with this mic. It sounds good now, finally. So now I'll listen to it. Anyway, no, it's awesome. They did what they did with Sgt. Pepper. They went back and found every little tape of every instrument. No, so not just like, oh, we got the recording of the whole album, let's clean it up. They actually, like, totally, like, OCD found every little instrument recording and piece of tape and scanned it all in and cleaned that up and then remixed the whole thing top to bottom. So it sounds like a new recording.
But sounds like a lot of work.
Does the
it was. Thank God I didn't do it.
Is that, who did Rick Rubin do the White Album?
What? No. What
Who did the White Album? I'm saying
George Martin with the Beatles.
Okay, so I'm just saying famous names and whatever.
Rick Rubin did Jay-Z.
So does what was his name again?
George Martin?
George Martin?
Yeah.
Does he allow this new remastering?
George Martin died.
Yeah.
Giles Martin's doing it. That's his son. He passed it all to his son. His son went into audio shit, and they passed it to him.
The definition of writing coattails.
Yeah, well, I just...
My dad worked with the Beatles. Now I'll handle it.
That kind of shit.
I mean, it must sound different.
Hey, if you were born into a family where it's like, hey, if you just kind of watch me do this shit, you can make millions doing stuff for the Beatles the rest of your life. I'd probably take that opportunity.
You know what? That's not fair. What about me?
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Sean could have done it.
I worked my ass off to produce that album, and then this guy cuts me in line.
But Beckett's going to edit the podcast soon. He's going to make millions.
That's true. He's pretty lucky.
That's a good point.
Honestly, I mean, I feel like George Martin's going to go down in history as like the Beatles producer.
Yeah.
Giles Martin is not.
No, but
no matter what he does,
George is dead
on these remasters. It's just like, I don't know. Could have made a name for yourself, but chose not to.
I'll take. We're talking about him.
Yeah.
Well, hey, the shit that Giles Martin has done has been awesome because he has found all this shit that hasn't been released and done all this stuff with it, and it sounds better than it ever has. And he got it on the streaming services, and he got all this stuff. So Giles Martin,
wasn't going to happen without him.
He's a good dude.
And
but
I'm just curious, as if like George Martin set it out to sound this way, and that's how it sounds if you buy the original album. Yeah. Now it's been totally remastered. Who's in charge of what it sounds like? Are they trying to make it sound like the original?
They go by the notes of what. Now, when they would originally mix these albums, they would do it in mono. And the Beatles themselves would be like, this is here, this sounds like this. And then it'd be like, okay, we need a stereo version. Oh, just have the engineers do that. And they would leave. And the engineers, the stereo versions that most people have heard were just shit the engineers did when, have the birds be in the second channel then. Like nobody really got stereo that much at that point, you know?
Yeah.
With this new one, it's like, let's take the Beatles plan the way that they wanted. Like, they wanted to hear an alarm clock here. Well, you can't hear that in the stereo version. That's only in the mono version. But let's put it in this new remix. And it sounds like a new recording. And then it's so full now, but it's the Beatles original, like, how they wanted it to be. So it's awesome. It sounds they sound like new recordings. It's crazy. But one thing that was a little weak, I gotta say, is when they did the Sgt. Pepper box set, like this, when they did the same thing with that, they released just like raw studio audio, and it was awesome. Yeah, it was them like workshopping songs, like they're playing this thing, and it's like that almost sounds like Lucy in the Sky with that, and it's like, oh no, they didn't know what to do with it yet. Oh, and you start to hear them work on it. I don't think
talking, right? They're talking in the background to each other.
They're making jokes and whatever. Now, they have that on the White Album. They have all the demos they did at George Harrison's house for every song. And it's really cool hearing them do that. But then it's like they tried to fill out like, oh, well, the other one had 5 discs. This one has to have 5 discs. And you could tell the rest of the discs are desperate. Like, the rest of them are like, this is the song Birthday without the bass guitar.
Oh my God!
This is Honey Pie without the flute.
What is your take on J.R.R. Tolkien's son continuing the Lord of the Rings books?
No,
based on his father's notes.
Oh dear God, no.
Well, what's the difference?
What do you mean? What's the difference? They're not making new stuff.
It's all this like unfinished. J.R.R. Tolkien had these stories he wanted to tell. He made all these notes about it, so his son, who grew up with him, is going to complete his story.
They're not completing unfinished Beatles songs. They're just releasing the recordings. I mean, those recordings have existed in bootleg, shitty versions, and they just cleaned them up. That's all they did.
Like
so I don't.
Princess
But it's not like John Lennon's there being like, yeah, that's good.
No.
That's exactly how I wanted it.
No,
It's somebody else interpreting the work that came before, and they're like they're putting their own
That
fingerprints on
doesn't
it.
seem the same to me. That doesn't seem the same. That they're cleaning them up and putting them out in that way versus and following those directions versus like. He always talked about there being a violin here, so he added that. Like they're not adding any,
Well, isn't what you're saying, Derek? Like he added more to the story, whereas it's not like they're making new Beatles.
Well, he's
songs.
like
Yeah.
finishing these unfinished books.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Wow.
He's doing fan fiction about
Yeah,
his
I
father.
mean,
No, I think that's totally different to me.
Yeah,
Like
if they
that.
made a new song out of what they had, then
Yeah.
I think that would
remember
be.
when Nirvana did it?
Nirvana did what?
That You Know You're Right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That song wasn't very
It's
good.
just like they're doing it with Prince's demos and his shit that he didn't want released now. It's
Oh,
like
wow.
when the family gets in control of the estate.
yeah, they did
like-
that with.
Well,
Nick
yeah, I
Cave.
feel
make
like
money with your
typically
stuff.
when the family who didn't make a name from themselves, didn't do the rags to riches journey, they're already born rich. They're just going to keep re-releasing the stuff that their predecessor did, so that they
Yeah.
keep the gravy train flowing.
With Mitch Hedberg, he died, and they released
Oh yeah.
a comedy CD that it was just him working on jokes. So
Yeah.
a lot of times, like him, like not. He kind of bombs, but it's like he never intended this to be
No.
heard.
Yeah.
Besides,
Yeah.
like in the club that one night.
But
So do you think they shouldn't have put that out?
I agree. They shouldn't have put that
But
out.
what about the fans who are like, I don't care if it sucks. I love Mitch Hedberg. I just want to hear it.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, probably he wouldn't care, really. I guess, but who's to say? I feel like, nah, let him, because he's bombing. It didn't turn out very good.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
And
But-
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, but also though, in addition, regardless of all this, I talked about like Giles Martin being the producer on this.
That's where
Yeah.
all this came from.
Yeah. Paul and Ringo have been involved in this. So
Okay,
it's not like this guy is going rogue.
It's
Sure.
as,
So
I
that-
agree. It's as good as you can get because Charles Martin is dead. Not Charles Martin.
Charles
George.
The voice of
George
Mario
Martin.
is
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
George
That's Martinet.
is
Yeah.
dead.
George is dead. Yeah. So that's as close as you can get. I think that's better than nothing. But it is. Yeah. It's just a little hinky
I think that they will probably re-release this again 10 years from now.
to keep making money.
They'll find a way to do
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
sure
sure
they
they
It's
will.
like Resident Evil 4.
So at what
and
point
it's
does
fine.
it become redundant?
Well, I was thinking
Oh, yeah.
with this too. Like, I do think Paul is sick of the Beatles.
I think he went through a phase of it, and I don't think that now.
You think he's been back
I
into
think
it?
he is. He tours more than anybody else.
True.
And he's talked about it on Stern,
Yeah.
and Howard proposed it the same way. It was just like, I mean, come on, are you sick of this? And he's like, do you think maybe that I love it? I mean, do you think there might be a chance that I love? I saw there was definitely a phase where maybe he didn't want to so much, but
Yeah.
he definitely is in this phase now of like, look, I'm the one carrying the torch of the Beatles,
Yeah. Right.
And I'm embracing that, and he doesn't have to do that there
Yeah.
in any way, but I actually think he's found that enjoyment in that.
Because once he's gone, that's
Yeah,
it.
That's it.
I mean, they have Ringo.
And Yoko.
I'm
Yeah.
assuming Ringo's going
I'd
to live
rather
the
have Yoko.
longest. I'm just going into that assumption that
yeah, I think so too.
because no one wanted that.
My favorite thing about Ringo is that
Mean.
speaking of the White Album when they originally released it was numbered.
Right.
They're all the original pressing, the copies, every one of them had a number stamped on it, which I don't know if that had been done before or not, but whatever. That made it kind of a fun. Oh, what'd you get? Oh, I got 100. You only got 100. Mine's 10,000. Whatever. Anyway, they numbered them, and the question was always who has number one. Ringo has number one, and it was like whoa. And then somebody told the story about it, and they were like, yeah. They gave number one to John. John went, I don't give a shit about this, and gave it to Ringo. I thought that was like, what a perfect story.
Great.
Anyway, so that's that. I've got number two. Oh, I'm not talking about the White Album. Anyway,
Paul has two. Gotta have two.
I think Paul has like 4. I think he has like number 4.
Oh, so George had.
It's a mystery.
Poor George.
You know
I know.
what?
Paul is so pissed about how
Gotta
he
do
got
some
shafted.
math here. Shit.
I-
'Cause he couldn't- Paul was saying that, I could have got $500 on eBay, I got hosed.
We
What'd
should have
you think of
numbered
that?
our vinyl.
What?
We should have numbered
They're all
ours.
gonna be number 64.
It might not be too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what they can do.
Okay.
That would be kind of fun. Like you got,
It'll be just like the White Album at that point.
So who gets one? Who's the Ringo here?
Maybe even
and
more
dude,
rare.
in 10 years we can re-release this shit.
Yeah.
And in
Easy.
50 years, somebody could mix it, make it sound good.
Beckett will remix it.
He'll go
Seriously.
into mixing.
50 years from now, Beckett goes, I'm going to redo version 1, but I'm going to clean it up.
Okay.
It's gonna make
Go
bad
nuts.
I'm on board. Go ahead, Beckett.
Bad credits gonna sound
Nah.
like fucking.
I feel like
Frampton Comes Alive.
we put it out how we wanted it. It's good. You don't need to fuck with it anymore. We did it.
I'm glad.
Sorry,
CGI.
Beckett.
Yeah, sorry, Beckett.
Um,
People in the chat are saying I'm being contrarian about all this Beatles stuff. Look, this is a money grab. That's it. Like, if you want to buy it, cool. But this album has been out for 50 years.
You can listen to it for free on the internet right now.
Yeah, and if you buy the record in a thrift store, Beatles aren't going to see any money. But the albums are still popular, so they want to figure out a way to make money off of them. So they do all these bells and whistles to re-release it.
But here's the thing: it did a
Yeah.
bunch of cool shit that I wanted to hear, so I bought
That's
it.
cool, man.
It
If you're
served
into that,
you.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm
As a
saying,
customer,
like,
you were
that's it.
served.
yeah, if you're a fan. But it's a cash grab. That was the motivation for
Yeah.
it. That's
Is
what
it
I
on,
believe. That's
is
what
it
I
on
believe.
Apple Music?
Yeah,
Oh, hell yeah.
yeah.
Right in time for Christmas.
Cool.
They really it's super interesting reading about how they used to record their albums because
Yeah.
they didn't have all the multi-track stuff. You know, obviously they didn't have computers, and it's so funny because they would record all these hundreds of sounds, and then they would bounce it down to like they had a tape machine that could hold 4 tracks.
Yeah.
So they would just record it all and bounce it down to 1 tape track.
Yeah.
And then they bounce it down, whatever. So, if you're a super fan and you want to hear it now in a way that it isn't in that compression, it's awesome. As I geek out about that stuff, so I am loving it. But yeah, I mean, like, obviously they're out to make money. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah. Two sides of the coin. Like,
Definitely.
nobody here is going to win and be like, I'm right. You know,
Yeah.
It got bounced down, but it ended up sounding how it sounded. And that was the
Yeah.
sound of the Beatles.
Which is
And it
classic.
was fucking like, it
was
changed
enough.
the world.
Yeah.
So they did it, you know. The Beatles experience has been around for half a century.
Yeah.
This album's been out for half a century.
Isn't that crazy? It's
Yeah.
50 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just yesterday.
Yesterday,
I hopped on my bike to go buy that
all his troubles seem so far.
for a nickel.
What